you awesome scuba divers out there, welcome to Scuba Diving Magazine, your favourite place for the latest scuba diving news and gear reviews. Today we're discussing exercising after or even during and before scuba diving. Now there are plenty of things that you really shouldn't do right after scuba diving that range from flying in an aeroplane, jumping in a hot tub, and of course leaving your cylinder standing upright, because that will cost you a drink to whoever owns that cylinder. But one thing that isn't recommended soon after a dive is exercise. Now, this isn't an excuse to be lazy and make your dive master carry your empty cylinders to the filling station, but if you're like this diver in this Dan article who wants to warm up after a cold dive by going for a run, then maybe think of another way to warm up. Now, this video is sponsored by the big diving superstore scuba.com. Make sure to visit scuba.com for your next dive gear investment. So the account goes as thusly: my son and I have been mapping the bottom of a quarry. We all know what course they're doing. We did several dives last weekend. Each was to about 9 meters and 45 minutes long. The water was cold, so we decided to run about 1.5 kilometers around the quarry between dives to get warm. We started running about 10 minutes after coming out of the water. To our surprise, we ran much better and we were able to breathe more easily than usual. I understand it may be inadvisable to exercise too soon after diving, but I wondered if you could explain why we found breathing whilst running so much easier after diving. It was a complete surprise to both of us. We thought we'd be sluggish, but it was just the opposite was true. So this opens up some interesting questions, and the reason why strenuous exercise is discouraged soon after a dive is because it stimulates bubble formation and blood flow increases in your body. Both of these are bad for decompression. Dan uses the same analogy for normal decompression, a bottle of fizzy drink. It's a great analogy. Under normal circumstances, you open up a fizzy drink and bubbles form out of solution because of the reduction in pressure. It's a great visual analogy to kind of what's going on in your body if you decompress too fast. Now, what happens if you shake up that fizzy drink and then open it? Similar to shaking up a fizzy drink, exercise and high joint forces like jumping up and around and carrying heavy items can promote bubble formation. In this particular case, they were pretty shallow, and after a 45-minute dive, there's a slim chance that exercise could cause a decompression illness. If they were diving a bit deeper, then it would be a greater risk, but as a general diving rule, you should try to avoid exercise after a dive as much as possible. It's a good excuse to go scuba diving even more so that you can avoid some strenuous housework in the interest of safety. The next consideration in this particular case is the impact of immersion, the breathing equipment and the person themselves. The combined effects of a blood shift to the chest, primarily caused by the hydrostatic pressure of water around them, potentially magnified somewhat by additional cold stress, elevated breathing resistance from the mouthpiece, because breathing from the regulator isn't the same as just breathing as we are now, which can vary substantially depending on your body position, your depth due to changing gas density. 9 meters isn't particularly deep, so you're not going to have that much of an issue with changes in gas density, but if you're diving deeper, it is a consideration. Level of exercise and the characteristics of the regulator itself. I mean, exercise on this dive, if they're mapping a quarry in particular, chances are that wasn't particularly strenuous, but if you are doing a lot of strenuous activity, that can increase risks. Your state of hydration. Bear in mind that being overhydrated can increase the likelihood of respiratory problems. So you have to really thread that needle between becoming like underhydrated or overhydrated. You've got to get it just right. And of course, miscellaneous factors such as age, gender in some instances, constrictive equipment, and of course physical fitness can lead to a degree of respiratory compromise after diving. If enough of these small factors work together, a swimmer or a diver may develop a condition known as immersion pulmonary edema, or IPO, in which excess fluid enters the lungs and compromises breathing during or following the dive. So you do have to be quite careful. The solution is to try to reduce the impact of each element, a goal that divers may achieve consciously or unconsciously. Some protection is provided by maintaining a normal pattern of good but not excessive hydration, don't overhydrate, and by maintaining an optimal body position and low exercise intensity during dives to reduce breathing effort. Immersion, especially in cold water, so this time of year you do have to pay particular attention, can induce some respiratory compromise. Mild impairment may not be noticed post-dive because of more obvious benefits of removing the regulator, dropping off your heavy equipment, and having to work only against air. You're not moving through water anymore, so you suddenly feel, oh, this feels really great. So in this particular case, the sense of ease was more likely perceptual than actual. They've just taken all of this heavy equipment off. They're not moving through thick, heavy water compared to normal air, and you're not breathing from regulators. If you're breathing from lower end regulators, then you do have a slightly higher work of breathing rate throughout the entire breathing cycle, and you multiply that over 45 minutes, you suddenly get rid of that and start using just your normal lungs. You know, it feels a bit easier to breathe now. Ultimately, whilst you may feel good post-dive, the dive itself has still stressed your system. For this reason, strenuous exercise is discouraged. The post-dive period is the right time to take it easy. Establishing a habit of keeping physical effort low after diving may offer important protection, since some dives are less benign than others. Think of this as a very inexpensive insurance for long-term health and safety. Just take it easy. For a good hour or two, take it as easy as possible, ideally up to 24 hours after a dive. So get out of the water, dry yourself off, wrap up warm, but don't hug a radiator because that will accelerate your decompression. Let your body warm itself up at its own rate. The human body's pretty good at doing that. Your main job right now is to prevent heat loss. So just kind of layers and protecting yourself from cold winds and such. Spend some time logging your dive properly. That's not particularly strenuous. Break down your kit and debrief with the rest of the dive team. Just nice, chilled out, easy things. You don't have to go for a run. Now is the time to recover, not to worry about your waistline or trying to get your heart rate going. Interestingly, the same can be said for the 24 hours before a dive. Some preliminary work has shown that an intense bout of exercise conducted 24 hours prior to a dive may reduce bubble presence in humans, possibly by inhibiting micronuclei activity, but this potentially protective effect was not seen with exercise conducted closer to the dive time. It was only the day previously where they did see these positive effects. While the effect does need to be validated, the preliminary findings may support a simple rule of thumb for scheduling exercise. To reduce the risk, it's a good idea to avoid intense exercise 24 hours before and after diving. So that's nice and easy to remember. Scuba diving has this air of being a very go with the flow kind of sport, and it does appeal to a wide range of physicalities and levels of fitness thanks to its weightlessness when you're underwater, but divers do need to have a good level of strength and aerobic ability, and divers who are not physically fit risk not only their own lives but their dive buddies' lives as well. When moments matter, a dive partner should be able to help a fellow diver back to the shore or onto a boat to receive first aid. It's not so much about that really nice chilled out warm dive with no current, it's when your buddy has equipment failure, the water temperature drops, and you need to haul your buddy out of the water all by yourself. And trust me, that isn't easy, even if you're both physically fit. So do try to look after yourself for the sake of both yourself and your buddy. Whilst there actually isn't much observed correlation between divers being overweight and decompression illness, physical fitness has been associated with fewer post-decompression bubbles in humans. When you also look at the data regarding diver fatalities in recent years, there's also a correlation between overweight or obese divers and cardiac emergencies. That's why there's so many programs today nowadays looking after scuba divers' hearts, making sure that your heart is fit and healthy for the dive. In this annual report, 74% of divers involved in fatal dive accidents were overweight or obese in cases where the victim's body mass index was actually known. 74%. That's a strong correlation. A diver who is fit to dive from a boat in tropical water may not be fit to shore dive in cold water. Similarly, an older diver who maintains a healthy weight but lacks the physical strength might be better off avoiding diving in some more challenging conditions. Ideally, every diver should maintain a healthy weight and exercise for at least 30 minutes per day, or 2.5 hours of moderate intensity aerobic exercise per week, and engage in some kind of muscle strengthening activities involving all major muscle groups 2 or more days per week. Some exercise is better than none at all, and workouts don't have to take place in the gym. Walking and swimming are two of the very numerous alternatives to just exercising at a gym. Personally, I walk my dogs at a brisk pace most of the time, or I take them for a run if they're up for it. And I have home weights. I've got my newborn son as well. It takes a lot of my energy chasing after him. Even if you don't have a gym membership, it's still easy to work out at home. You just need to make a bit of time to do something physical. So next time you go scuba diving, try to schedule your CrossFit, your Pilates, your Peloton, whatever it is, the day before the dive. Give it 24 hours, nothing leading up to the dive, or nothing particularly strenuous leading up to the dive. You can still carry your cylinders around, but try to take it as easy as possible. On the dive itself, that's another subject for you to think about before my next video. Right now, after watching this, do you think you should be exerting yourself during each portion of the dive? How do you think heavy exertion would affect your on-gassing and your off-gassing rates during the descent, the bottom, ascent, and stops? Do you think you should be fitting against currents, and how do you think that's going to affect your decompression? Let me know down in the comments. Remember to head over to scuba.com for your next scuba equipment purchase, and head over to our website scubadivermag.com for the latest scuba diving news, and subscribe to the YouTube channel here. Thank you for watching, everybody, and of course, safe diving.